What does it sound like when $35 million dreams turn into a river? It doesn't sound like crashing. It doesn't sound like chaos. It sounds like quiet justice, a deep, rolling, relentless surge of water claiming what was always its own. I know, because I was the one who opened the gates. They thought I was just another soldier they could push around, another name on a document they could ignore. They thought my family's legacy was a blank check for their luxury subdivisions and their pristine lawns. The HOA board, the developers, my so-called neighbors, they stole my land while I was deployed, fighting for a country they were too busy profiting from to truly appreciate. They didn't just steal dirt and trees. They stole my father's sweat, my grandfather's memory, and my future. But they made one critical, multi-million-dollar mistake. They never bothered to check who owned the water, and I never bothered to warn them. I was about to give every single one of their McMansions the lakefront property they never asked for. This is not a story of pettiness. This is a story of precision. My name is Alex. For generations, my family owned a sprawling 200-acre parcel just outside the city limits. It wasn't fancy. To most, it was just wild, beautiful land, forests, a creek, and a huge, grassy valley. But to me, it was everything. It was where my dad taught me to fish, where my grandfather told me stories about the old days. He'd always point to the small, sturdy dam up in the hills, built by the Army Corps of Engineers in the 50s. That dam, he'd say, and the water rights that come with it are more valuable than gold. They're this land's lifeblood. You protect that, Alex. You protect it with your life. I took that to heart. But my life took me elsewhere. I enlisted. I was deployed overseas. It's a strange feeling, leaving everything you know behind, protect an ideal home, trusting that home will still be there when you get back. I'd get emails from a property management company the HOA had hired. They were always pushy. They talked about community progress and development potential. They made lowball offers to buy the land. I always said no. My replies were short, sent from a shaky internet connection thousands of miles away. Not interested. The land is not for sale. The email stopped. I assumed they'd gotten the message. I was wrong. They had just changed their strategy. When my tour ended, I came home. I drove out to the land, ready for the quiet, for the peace. But as I turned down the old county road, my heart just stopped. The forest was gone. The valley was gone. In its place was a sea of identical beige McMansions, perfectly manicured lawns, brand new blacktop roads with names like Serenity Lane and Tranquil View. A massive, gaudy stone sign read, "The Estates at Grand Oaks, a premier HOA community." I felt physically sick. I drove through the streets, my uniform still on, my duffel bag in the passenger seat. People in yoga outfits gave me weird looks from their golf carts. I was a ghost in my own life. I went straight to the HOA's management office. The woman behind the desk, Karen, I swear that was her name, had a smile so plastic it could have been manufactured in one of these new houses. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "I'm Alex Rourke. You built these houses on my property." Her smile didn't even flicker. "Oh, I think you're mistaken, sir. This land was purchased through a compulsory purchase order for community development. It was all very legal." She slid a folder across the desk. It was filled with legalese, documents with signatures that looked nothing like mine. They'd used a loophole, claiming the land was abandoned and a blight on the county's development plans. They'd gotten a corrupt official to sign off on a compulsory purchase order, pay my family a fraction of its worth into an escrow account I never knew existed. I felt a cold fury settle in my bones. This wasn't a mistake. This was theft, dressed up in a suit and tied with a legal bow. "You stole from me," I said, my voice dangerously calm. while I was serving, "You think this is over." Karen's smile finally vanished. "I'd be very careful about making threats, Mr. Rourke. This is a private community. We have rules. We have security. I suggest you leave before we have you trespassed." I left, but I wasn't defeated. I was activated. My mission had just changed. A soldier doesn't charge in blindly. You gather intelligence. You find the weak point. I went to a lawyer, a grizzled old pit bull who specialized in property law. He looked over the documents and just started laughing, a dry, humorless laugh. "The purchase order is flimsy," he said. "We could fight it in court for years. But they have deep pockets. They'll drain you dry with legal fees before you ever see a verdict. So that's it." I asked, the hope draining from me. "I didn't say that," he said, a sly grin spreading across his face. "I said fighting the land purchase is hard. But did they bother to do a full title search? Did they look for easements, mineral rights, water rights?" A spark. My grandfather's voice. "You protect that, Alex." We dug. For weeks, we lived in the county records office. And we found it. The crown jewel. The silver bullet. The original deed. Signed over 100 years ago. Granted my family not just land, but all riparian rights to the creek and the watershed that fed it. Furthermore, the dam on the property, my property, was covered by a federal maintenance covenant with the Army Corps of Engineers. It was technically classified as a flood control structure. The local government or an HOA couldn't just touch it or tell me what to do with it. The lawyer leaned back in his chair. "They own the houses, Alex, but you own the rain that falls on those hills. You own the water in that creek. And most importantly, you own the right to manage that dam for flood control purposes." A plan began to form. Not a plan of angry destruction. A plan of beautiful, precise, legal engineering. I started visiting the dam weekly. I took photos. I noted the water level. I filed perfectly legitimate reports with the Army Corps of Engineers, expressing my concern about sediment buildup and potential pressure on the spillway gates. I was a responsible owner. I was doing my due diligence. The fall rains came. Heavy, relentless. The reservoir behind the dam was getting fuller than it had been in decades. The new estates at Grand Oaks had paved over all the natural drainage ground. The water had nowhere to go but down, straight into the valley they'd built in. The HOA sent me a letter, a violation notice. They claimed my loitering at the dam was creating anxiety among residents and was not in keeping with the community's aesthetic standards. I framed that letter. It was my favorite piece of art. The tension was building. The pressure in the reservoir was building. I was calm. I had done my recon. I knew the law. I was waiting for the perfect moment. The day it happened was a Tuesday. It had been raining for 72 hours straight. The National Weather Service issued a flood watch. My phone buzzed. It was Karen from the HOA. "Mr. Rourke." Her voice was shrill, panicked. "The creek behind the properties is rising very quickly. We've been told your dam is a concern. You need to release water slowly and under our supervision to mitigate risk to the community." I smiled. "Thank you for your concern, Karen. But the management of this federal flood control structure is my responsibility under the guidance of the Army Corps of Engineers. I will take the necessary actions I deem appropriate to ensure the structural integrity of the dam and the safety of the downstream area." "What does that mean?" she shrieked. "It means," I said, my voice calm and steady, "I'm going to do my job." I drove up to the dam. The rain was pounding on my roof. The reservoir was a churning, brown lake, lapping just inches from the top of the spillway. It was time. I called the Army Corps engineer I'd been liaising with. "It's go time," I said, "initiating a full emergency spillway release to prevent catastrophic failure." Following Protocol Bravo. Roger that. Alex, we concur with your assessment. Release the gates. I entered the code into the old control shed. With a deep, groaning shudder that I felt in my soul, the massive main spillway gates began to rise. It was an explosion. It was a release. A deep, powerful, controlled roar erupted as a wall of water surged forward, thundering down the spillway channel. The channel, which my grandfather had helped dig, ran straight through what was now the center of the estates. I got in my truck and drove to a high vantage point. I watched. I didn't cheer. I didn't laugh. I just watched with a quiet, profound sense of justice. The water didn't smash the houses. It wasn't a tsunami. It was a relentless, rising tide. It poured down the streets, turning Serenity Lane into a river. It swallowed the lawns, the fancy mailbox posts, the flower beds. Within an hour, the lowest 10 homes had water up to their front doors. Within 2 hours, the Central Park was a lagoon. Golf carts were submerged. Their precious community was drowning. Not in a natural disaster, but in the very resource they had forgotten to account for. The news helicopters arrived. I saw Karen on TV later, soaked and hysterical, calling it an act of eco-terrorism. But the law was on my side. I had the paperwork. I had the federal covenant. I had acted to save the dam from collapse, which would have caused a real catastrophe. My lawyer issued a statement. Mr. Rourke acted responsibly to protect public infrastructure. The unfortunate damage to the illegally constructed homes in the watershed's natural floodplain is a matter for their developers and their insurance companies to resolve. They were wiped out, financially, morally. The lawsuits against the developers and the HOA board were endless. Every homeowner sued them for fraud. The community was abandoned. And my land? Once the water receded, it was cleansed. The ugly houses, stained with mud and sin, stood empty. I eventually got the title back, along with a massive settlement. I had the houses torn down. I restored the valley. Now there's a real lake there, a beautiful, natural one. They thought the rules were theirs to weaponize. They thought they could take from someone who wasn't there to fight back. They forgot that the most powerful force in nature isn't greed. It's patience. It's the relentless, inevitable flow of justice. This was a revenge. It was a restoration. If you think this story is wild, you haven't seen anything yet. This is just one story from the dark, bizarre, and unbelievable world of HOAs. Want to see a Karen get out Karen by a retired lawyer who used her own bylaws to get her exotic pet kangaroo declared a common area attraction? Or what about the time an entire HOA board was replaced by a coalition of teenagers who ran on a platform of better Wi-Fi and later found a secret embezzlement scheme? The world of power-hungry HOAs and the ingenious people who fight back is deeper and crazier than you can imagine. If you want more of these real-life stories of epic revenge, shocking justice, and unbelievable satire, then you need to subscribe to Behind the HOA Stories. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we drop new stories every single day. We turn their tyranny into our content. Why stay bored when you can be behind the HOA? Next time on Behind the HOA, they banned my service dog. So I had him officially elected to the HOA board. The meeting where he had to vote on his own eligibility was pure chaos. Subscribe to see what happens.